This happened last Sunday, and I still can't make eye contact with half my family. So for context, I, 28M, have been dating my girlfriend, Lexi, 26F, for a little under a year. Things have been getting pretty serious, and for the past couple of months, we've been staying at each other's apartments more often than not. Everything was going great. Emphasis on was. So last weekend was Easter. I'm not super religious, but my family is, and every year we do a big Easter dinner at my parents' house. Ham, scalloped potatoes, awkward prayers, the works. Lexi was invited, but she had to visit her own parents that day in another state, so we made plans to see each other that night. Now, on Sunday morning, I woke up alone in my apartment, and Lexi sent me a picture of herself in this pastel pink dress. She looked incredible, like aggressively good-looking for a family holiday. Naturally, I responded the way any guy in a committed relationship would. I sent a flirtatious text, then another. Then, because I'm an absolute moron with the wisdom of a jelly bean, I sent her a picture of myself shirtless, flexing poorly, with the caption, "Can't wait to tear that dress off later, Miss Easter Bunny rabbit face sweat droplets." I'm aware it was cringe, but we do that kind of stuff. It's part of the fun. Except in my early morning brain fog, I had accidentally sent it to my mom. Let that sink in. Not only did I sext my mom, but I sexted her about tearing off a dress, called her Miss Easter Bunny, and added the worst combination of emojis known to man. I didn't realize it right away. In fact, I showered, got dressed, and even stopped at the store to grab a bottle of wine for dinner. When I finally checked my phone, I saw that I had a new message from Mom Red Heart with a simple response. I really don't think this was meant for me.
Panic.
Cold sweat.
Nausea.
I almost threw up in the Trader Joe's parking lot. I opened the message thread, and sure enough, there it was. My hairy chest, flexed in vain glory, under a thirst text sent to the woman who gave birth to me. Now, I know what you're thinking.
Just own it, apologize, move on.
But you don't know my mom. She's not the haha, no worries type. She's the we need to talk about boundaries and decency type. She's the type to gently pray over the Wi-Fi if the internet is acting up. So now I'm panicking, driving to Easter dinner with a bottle of Pinot Grigio and the growing suspicion that my life is over. I get there and my mom opens the door with this forced smile, like she's trying not to scream. She hugs me for approximately 1.2 seconds, then pulls away and says, "We'll talk later." That's code for you're about to be emotionally eviscerated. Dinner starts normal enough. My dad's telling some story about the time he got lost in a Bass Pro shop for 3 hours. My younger sister is arguing with my cousin about whether Jesus would have used TikTok. But my mom keeps glancing at me like she's expecting me to spontaneously combust. Then comes dessert. Everyone's sitting around eating lemon bars and carrot cake, and my mom suddenly stands up and says, "Before we end the evening, I think we need to have a little family moment."
No.
No, no, no. Not this. Please God, I'll go to church every Sunday for the rest of my life. Just don't let this be happening. She goes, "Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we hit the wrong buttons. Technology can be confusing." Everyone's looking around, confused. My aunt leans over and whispers, "Did she find porn on your dad's iPad again?" I want to melt into the floor. Then she looks right at me and says, "And sometimes those mistakes are very personal, very private, and very inappropriate." Dead silence. My cousin snorts. My grandma says, "Oh, dear." My dad looks like he just realized what's happening and is considering whether or not to fake a heart attack. My mom continues, "I just want to say that I love all my children, even when they accidentally send their mother messages meant for someone else. I am dying.
My soul has left my body.
I am now a husk." Then my sister, never one to miss an opportunity to humiliate me, says, "Wait, was that the bunny text?" MOM showed me.
What?
Apparently, my mom had been so horrified and confused, she showed it to my sister thinking it might be some kind of weird spam or joke.
Nope.
Just my sad attempt at sexy. My uncle actually chokes on a bite of carrot cake. My aunt is wheezing. My grandma is now praying aloud. I don't even remember the rest of the evening. I might have blacked out from shame. I vaguely remember grabbing my coat and muttering something about needing to go, rethink my life in silence. I drove home, called Lexi, and told her everything. Thankfully, she thought it was hilarious. She laughed so hard she dropped her phone. She's now calling me the Easter thirst trap. We're fine. My family, on the other hand, not so much. It's been a week and I'm still getting texts from relatives with bunny emojis. My sister updated the contact name in her phone for me to Thumper. My dad hasn't spoken about it, but I saw him Google how to delete memory. The worst part? My mom is now obsessed with the idea that I need to be more careful and has started sending me articles like how to double-check before you text and why autocorrect isn't the real problem. You are.
So yeah.
I sexted my mom by accident and triggered a full-blown family meeting during Easter dinner. My only comfort is that I didn't attach anything worse in the photo. Small mercies. But you better believe I triple-check every message now. And Easter is cancelled until further notice. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. TIFU by crashing a funeral in a mascot costume and ruining a eulogy. So this actually happened last weekend, and I think I've finally regained enough composure to talk about it without cringing into another dimension. I work part-time as a mascot for a minor league baseball team. It's not glamorous, but it pays, and honestly, I enjoy it. Kids laugh, people take pictures, and I get to dance like an idiot without anyone judging me to my face. The costume is a giant blue platypus named Plunky. Huge foam head, comically big feet, and a perpetually dumb grin plastered on its face. Classic minor league charm. Anyway, my cousin Jenny was getting married last Saturday, and the ceremony was at this big community center out in the suburbs. The place is huge and has a dozen event rooms, all labeled with these innocuous names like Willow Hall and Cedar Room. Jenny's wedding was in Maple Garden Room. Simple enough. Here's where it starts to go off the rails. The baseball team had an early afternoon promotional event at a park just a few miles from the wedding venue. I told Jenny I'd swing by her wedding right after. Time was tight, so I planned everything down to the minute. Do the Plunky gig for an hour, drive straight to the center, change in the car, and make it in time for the ceremony. Things were going well until I got a call from the team manager halfway through the promo. He needed Plunky to make a surprise appearance at a kid's birthday party just 10 minutes away, some VIP sponsor's son. He begged, I caved. It was supposed to be a 15-minute stop. That was a lie. I ended up stuck there for nearly 45 minutes because the kid wouldn't let go of my tail and kept trying to feed me cake through the foam snout. Now I'm running late. I tear out of the parking lot in full mascot costume because I figured it'd be faster to change in the parking lot at the venue. I'm flying down suburban streets like a discount Marvel villain, foam feet bouncing on the gas pedal, sweating profusely inside this blue hellsuit. I get to the community center, barely find a parking spot, and realize I forgot my dress clothes in the rush.
Panic.
No time to drive back. My phone buzzes. A text from Jenny. We're about to start. Hurry. I decide to just sneak into the building, find a bathroom, and maybe at least ditch the mascot head. I figured I could slip into the back, stay low, and blend in until the ceremony ends. I'm already a failure of a cousin, but I didn't want to be a total no-show. I duck into the building, trying to look casual. The front desk girl just blinks at me like I'm a hallucination, but says nothing. I head for Maple Garden Room. Or so I thought. I burst through the doors of what I thought was Jenny's wedding, still wearing the full Plunky suit. Everyone turns. Dead silence. But it's not a wedding. It's a funeral. More specifically, the funeral of a local retired teacher named Margaret who apparently was beloved by everyone in town. People are wearing black. There's a giant framed photo of an elderly woman surrounded by flowers at the front, and the air is thick with mourning. And here I am, a 6-foot-tall, smiling blue platypus standing in the doorway like a glitch in the Matrix. My first instinct is to bolt. But in my panic, I step forward and trip over one of Plunky's foam feet, face planting hard into the carpet. The whole suit makes this loud whomp and then a wheezy fart sound as the built-in fan hits the floor.
Gasps.
Some laughter. Mostly horror. I scramble to my feet. An elderly man near the front actually clutches his chest like he's about to go down with me. A child starts crying. Someone mutters, "What in God's name?" and I hear the phrase, "disrespectful punk," somewhere from the middle rows. I try to explain, still wearing the head because it's strapped in the back, and I can't find a release clip in my panic. So it just sounds like a muffled nightmare. I thought this was a wedding. This somehow makes it worse. One woman shrieks, "You're here to mock her?" And people start rising out of their seats. A man in a black suit, probably her son, starts charging toward me with the kind of expression that says he's about to personally euthanize a platypus. I run. Full sprint. Foam feet slapping the floor like wet sponges, I bolt back into the hallway, crash into a server carrying a tray of mini quiches, and leave a wake of destruction behind me. Quiches everywhere. Some actually get lodged in Plunky's open mouth. I finally find an exit, stumble out into a side garden, and collapse behind a hedge. I take off the head, gasping for air and dignity. I sit there for a minute, contemplating my existence and wondering if this will make it into a local paper's weird news section. After about 20 minutes, I creep around the building until I find the actual Maple Garden room. Jenny's ceremony is just ending.
Perfect.
I slip in the back, still wearing the rest of the suit, minus the head, looking like I lost a bet. My aunt sees me and just shakes her head like I'm a stray dog that wandered in from a storm. Jenny mouths WTF, but she's too happy to be mad. Bless her. Later at the reception, I try to explain what happened. It becomes the table's main source of entertainment. A groomsman asks if I moonlight as a grief counselor in mascot form. My dad tells the story to the DJ during a break, and next thing I know, I'm being asked to dance as Plunky. I go with it. What else can you do when you've traumatized an entire family with foam feet and funeral farts? I've since written a letter of apology to the funeral home. I'm debating sending flowers to Margaret's family with a note that says, "Sorry I ruined your goodbye. Plunky mourns with you." Moral of the story: double-check your event room, and maybe don't wear a 30-pound mascot suit to a community center with shared entrances. Because nothing says, "Rest in peace," like a platypus doing the worm in front of a casket. TIFU by accidentally getting involved in a cult wedding in rural Japan and almost marrying a stranger in front of 200 people. So this happened about 4 years ago, when I, then 24M, was backpacking across Asia. I had just finished a volunteer stint in Vietnam and made my way up to Japan. My plan was to travel from Tokyo down to Hiroshima, making stops in Osaka and Kyoto, soaking up culture, eating my body weight in ramen, and just generally vibing out. One night in Kyoto, I got invited to a local izakaya by a guy I met at my hostel. He was an English teacher named Kenta, super friendly, mid-30s, and pretty fluent in English. We hit it off talking about old-school anime and Japanese folklore, and after a few sake bombs, he said something like, "You want to see real Japan? Not tourist stuff." Of course I said yes. I'm an idiot like that. The next morning, he picked me up in his tiny K car, and we drove about 3 hours into the mountains, into a village I couldn't even find on Google Maps later. It was stunning though, green forests, old wooden homes, rice paddies, and this eerie fog that made everything feel like a Studio Ghibli movie. We stopped at a small shop, got some snacks, then drove up this narrow path to what looked like a shrine or temple complex. As we arrived, people started coming out to greet us. And I mean like 30 people. They were smiling, bowing, offering me tea, snacks, asking questions in broken English. Kenta introduced me as his special guest from America, and they treated me like royalty. I was honestly flattered and thought it was some small-town hospitality thing. Then this older guy in robes came out, looked like a monk or a priest, and he started asking me very specific questions. Was I a seeker? Did I believe the earth was ready to awaken? Was I ready for union? I assumed it was philosophical or religious small talk, so I nodded and said yes, absolutely, to everything like a dumbass. The old man smiled and said, Then it is time. Before I could ask what exactly it was time for, a group of women led me into a small building to cleanse me. I was stripped, scrubbed down, yes, by other men, thankfully, then dressed in white ceremonial robes. I kept trying to ask what was going on, but they just kept smiling and saying things like big honor and very special. I didn't want to offend anyone, so I kept going with it, thinking maybe it was some kind of festival or reenactment thing. Then they led me to a larger hall filled with people, and right there at the altar was a woman, also dressed in white, wearing traditional makeup and headwear. She looked confused. I recognized her from earlier, maybe early 20s, and she looked just as out of the loop as I felt. Kenta met me at the steps and whispered, "Don't be nervous. Just follow my lead. It's symbolic." I said, "Symbolic of what?" He just grinned and said, "You'll find out." Suddenly drums started.
Chanting.
Incense everywhere. And then the priest guy stepped forward and started a long speech in Japanese. People were nodding, some were crying, and every once in a while, the priest would gesture toward me and the girl, and the crowd would clap or cheer. Then came the vows. I thought I misheard. But no, the priest was telling us to repeat phrases. First her, then me. Stuff like, "I bind my soul to yours," and "Together we rise when the stars fall." I looked at Kenta, who gave me a thumbs up. I looked at the girl, who was wide-eyed and mouthed, "Do you speak Japanese?" I shook my head. We both laughed nervously, which the crowd took as joy apparently, because they erupted in applause. Then they brought out a braided rope, which they tied around our wrists. The priest said something that made everyone get on their knees and bow. Kenta came over, clapped me on the back, and said, "You did it, man. Married into the light." I just stared at him like, "Excuse me?" Apparently, what I had agreed to was a marriage ritual, a real one by the standards of this isolated group. They called themselves Children of the Earth Breath. It was some offshoot of Shintoism mixed with astrology, and I don't even know what. The girl, it turned out, was the daughter of a prominent family in the group. She had been offered as a bride for a foreigner of pure intent, which apparently meant the first dumb tourist to say yes to everything. We both freaked out after the ceremony. She pulled me aside and said she thought she was doing a joining ritual for good harvest energy, not an actual marriage. We confronted the priest and Kenta, but they were all like, "This is destiny. It has been seen." I tried explaining that I couldn't legally marry someone in a country where I wasn't a citizen and couldn't even understand the language, but they insisted the bond was spiritual, not legal. But deeply real, they said. Beyond laws. The girl, let's call her Aiko, was furious. She called her cousin who lived in Tokyo, and the next morning he showed up with 2 friends, and a lot of shouting happened. I was told to stay inside the house until it blew over. Eventually, Aiko's cousin made enough noise that the group agreed to release us from the spiritual bond through another ritual, which was just as weird. Chanting, water poured on our heads, and then we had to walk backward through a garden path while holding leaves. Afterward, Aiko and I shared a ride back to Kyoto with her cousin. She was cool about it, surprisingly, and we even got drinks later that night to laugh it off. She told me it was the weirdest thing that had ever happened to her, and that she was going to take a break from her family for a while. I agreed that next time, I'd maybe ask a few more questions before saying yes to anything involving robes. To this day, I still get weird postcards from Kenta. No return address. Just symbols and phrases like, "The stars remember your promise." I don't answer them. This happened 2 weeks ago, and I'm only just now emotionally recovering enough to share it. So my girlfriend Jenna and I have been dating for just under a year. Things have been going great, the kind of relationship where it feels easy and natural, like we skipped the awkward phase and jumped straight to synchronized toothbrushes and inside jokes. But I hadn't met her extended family yet, just her parents and a quick coffee shop introduction. Jenna's family owns a vineyard about an hour outside the city. It's a multi-generational business, and they're really proud of it. I'm talking there's a 15-minute photo montage playing in their tasting room proud. So, when they invited me out for the weekend to help with harvest prep and get to know the land, I figured this was my moment to impress. Show them I'm not just another software guy who can't handle dirt under his nails. I packed my best flannel, Bought a pair of rugged-looking gloves I'd never used before, and mentally prepared myself to charm every elderly relative with a firm handshake and generic admiration for grapevines. When we got there, everything looked like a postcard. Rolling hills, rows of vines stretching forever, chickens pecking at dirt like they'd signed a Disney contract. Jenna's family, all 18 of them, I swear, came out to greet us. There were cousins, great-aunts, toddlers who ran barefoot like they were immune to sharp things. Everyone hugged. Everyone laughed. One guy called me city boy, and I nervously laughed like that wasn't exactly what I was. After lunch, her Uncle Vince, who looks like the human version of a vineyard, sun-wrinkled, earthy, somehow always holding a glass of something, asked me if I could help with a small job while they got some equipment fixed. Nothing big, he said. Just need a body to keep the birds away from the western rows. Crows v. Been getting clever.
Cool, I thought.
Like a scarecrow? I can handle that. Maybe hold a stick or make some noise.
No.
Vince had plans. 10 minutes later, I'm in the back of his pickup truck holding a full-sized inflatable tube man, you know, the kind that flails around in front of used car dealerships. He and another uncle are duct-taping zip ties to the ends of it so it'll flap more aggressively. Then they strap me into a harness that's tethered to a wooden post, hand me a boombox, and tell me to move around a bit and play loud music. Apparently, the birds have figured out the stationary scarecrow, but movement and unpredictability freaks them out. So I became a human scarecrow. A flailing, music-blasting, tethered to a post scarecrow, with the inflatable tube man tied next to me like some deranged battle partner. I was out there for over 2 hours. My job was to dance, wave my arms, and yell occasionally. They gave me a whistle, which just made me feel like a traffic cop having a breakdown. It was humiliating, but I figure, hey, I'm helping. They'll love me for this. They did not. Apparently, Vince forgot to tell the others what I was doing, including Jenna, including her very Catholic grandmother who came down the hill with 3 of the youngest cousins to bring snacks to the workers. She sees me, sweaty, tangled in straps, arms windmilling next to an inflatable nightmare with EDM blasting from a boombox, and screams. Not just a "what is that" scream. A full-blown, "the devil has entered our vineyard" scream. The kids start crying. One of them yells, "monster," and runs directly into a bush. Jenna comes sprinting from the house, sees the scene, and just stops. Her face morphs from confusion to horror to a kind of cosmic amusement I can't describe. I try to explain. I really do. But I'm still strapped to the post, and the wind picks up, making the tube man smack me in the head mid-sentence. I stumble. The whistle flies out of my mouth like a dying canary. I fall sideways and hit the ground, the harness keeping me partially upright like a marionette with broken strings. By the time they untangle me, Jenna is laughing so hard she's crying, the kids are being bribed with juice boxes, and her grandmother is muttering prayers while clutching a rosary she apparently carries at all times. Dinner that night was tense. I tried to redeem myself, offered to help cook, complimented the homemade wine, even managed a decent chat with the rosary-wielding grandma, though she wouldn't make eye contact. But every so often, someone would snort or chuckle under their breath, and I knew they were picturing me flailing in the field like some caffeinated maraca. The next morning, Jenna found a handmade sign someone had hung on the barn. It said, "Scareboy 3000, now accepting bookings." They've turned me into a family legend. Not in the way I wanted. So yeah, I tried to be helpful, got mistaken for a demonic vineyard spirit, and now I'm immortalized as a running joke in a family I was hoping to impress. On the plus side, Jenna said she's never laughed that hard in her life. So maybe I didn't totally blow it. Just flailed it. So this happened over the course of the last month, but it all came to a glorious, horrifying crescendo this past weekend. Let me paint the picture. I'm a 31-year-old guy living in a relatively quiet suburban neighborhood. I work remotely, I'm an introvert, and I recently got very into gardening, meditation, and hosting little weekend nature sessions in my backyard. Think yoga, herbal tea, flute music on a Bluetooth speaker, and me, barefoot in loose linen pants I bought on Etsy. I'm just vibing. It's harmless. Well, at least I thought it was. To rewind a bit, I moved into this neighborhood last fall. I didn't meet many people because it started getting cold quickly, and I'm kind of a recluse anyway. But come spring, I was all about transforming my backyard into a little Zen sanctuary. Picture string lights, a fire pit, rows of planters with basil, sage, lavender. My little oasis. I decided to hold Sunday serenity sessions, just for me really. I'd light incense, brew some lemon balm tea, play relaxing music, and just meditate or do breath work. Alone.
In peace.
But then a thing happened. One day, a neighbor named Marcy waved at me over the fence while I was doing a slow, flowing Tai Chi routine to a flute remix of Tibetan bowls. She asked if I was a yoga instructor. I said no, I just like energy work. She raised her eyebrows and said that sounded cool. That was the end of that exchange. Or so I thought. The following Sunday, I came out for my usual session, and Marcy was already in my backyard, just sitting there, cross-legged, with a yoga mat. She had brought tea in a thermos and was already sipping it like she belonged. I was so stunned I didn't say anything at first. She greeted me with, "Namaste." I awkwardly responded in kind, and she said, "I hope you don't mind. I could really use this today. Your energy is so clean." I didn't have the heart to turn her away, so I just nodded and continued my routine. She followed along. I figured it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. The next week, she brought 2 friends. Then those friends brought their husbands. And it snowballed.
Fast.
Within 3 weeks, I had nearly 15 people showing up to my backyard every Sunday, sitting in a semicircle, waiting for me to lead them in what they now called the morning alignment. Let me be clear. I have no credentials. I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm not a spiritual guru. I don't even know what chakras really do. I just watch some YouTube videos on breathwork and like to smell rosemary while I stare at the sky. But I couldn't stop it. The more I tried to downplay what I was doing, the more they interpreted it as me being humble and mysterious. One woman named Trina whispered to another during a session, "He doesn't speak because he wants us to listen to the silence between the thoughts." I literally just didn't know what to say. At one point, a dude named Lance gave me a carved wooden staff as a gift of grounding. Another woman started bringing me little pouches of crystals, saying she felt called to support my aura work. I didn't even know I had aura work. I told them, "Guys, I'm just doing this for myself. I'm not trying to start anything." And someone literally responded, "Movements never start with trying. They start with being." That was when I realized I had accidentally founded a cult. But here's the thing, I didn't really believe they saw me that way. I figured people were just lonely and enjoying the community. I even started making cucumber water. It was kind of nice, if I'm honest. That is, until this past Sunday. I came out to find nearly 40 people in my backyard. Not just from my neighborhood anymore. Word had spread. Someone posted on the local Facebook group about the Awakening Circle in Sector 9. I don't even know what Sector 9 is. It sounds like a sci-fi quarantine zone. People brought offerings. Literal offerings. Someone placed a woven basket of eggs at my back door with a note that said, "For your continued clarity." A family brought a goat. A baby goat. Just tied it to my fence like that was normal. I don't know what the hell that was about. I think someone thought I was doing fertility rites. I was overwhelmed, obviously. But it reached absolute peak madness when this one guy, I think his name was Ron, stood up mid-session and said, "I surrender to the path you show us." And then, he freaking stripped naked. In my backyard. With children present. My neighbor Janet screamed. Her husband tried to cover their kids' eyes. Someone else started chanting. I yelled, "Nope," so loud I scared a squirrel off my rosemary bush. I had to climb onto my patio table and shout at everyone to leave immediately, and that this was not a spiritual retreat, not a movement, and definitely not a nudist colony. The goat bleated like it agreed with me. People were murmuring. One woman was crying. Ron was still naked. Eventually, they all filtered out, looking very confused and disappointed. Marcy just gave me a long, slow nod and said, "Sometimes the teacher must let go of the students to let them fly." I called animal control about the goat. I don't even know how to explain what happened in a way that won't get me flagged by some watch list. Now my neighborhood is split between people who think I'm the messiah of suburban Zen and others who think I'm running a weird sex cult out of a yoga garden. Either way, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be uninvited from the block barbecue. So yeah, I just wanted to do some stretches and drink tea in peace. Now I'm the barefoot prophet of Willow Creek Drive.
TIFU.
TIFU by pretending to be an old man for 2 years and then getting invited to my own funeral. So, this started as a joke. And like all good jokes, it spiraled way too far and ruined my life. About 2 years ago, I was working a soul-sucking remote job doing data entry. I lived alone, had no real social life, and the only joy I got was screwing around online. One night, after 3 beers and a particularly bleak Zoom meeting, I discovered a Facebook group called You Know You're from Pinebrook If. Pinebrook is a tiny town in the Midwest I've never been to. The group was all old folks reminiscing about high school in the 60s, corn festivals, and local church scandals. For no reason, I made a fake profile. I named him Frank Delaney, used a photo of a smiling older man I found in a reverse image search free zone, and made him 78 years old. Frank was a widower, a former high school principal, a crossword addict. He liked fishing, big band jazz, and remembering when gas was 23 cents. I posted once about remembering a diner called Jenny's that had the best coconut cream pie this side of the Mississippi. I made it up. They ate it up. Suddenly, I was the group's favorite member. People started tagging Frank in posts, asking if he remembered so-and-so, or what happened to Old Man Hargrove after the parade incident. I Googled. I improvised. I invented. I spun tales of Pinebrook's golden days that never happened. Then things got weird. Someone messaged Frank. A woman named Darlene. She was 74, used too many emojis, and claimed we'd danced at prom in 1963. I didn't know how to respond, so I went with it. Yes, Darlene. I remember your blue dress. Yes, the punch really was spiked. Yes, your laugh lit up the gymnasium. Darlene fell in love with Frank. I didn't mean for it to happen. She started messaging me daily. Long paragraphs. Memories she thought we shared. Her husband had passed 5 years ago. She lived alone. She'd never felt this kind of connection again. I should have come clean. I didn't. I leaned in. Because Darlene was sweet. She cared. She asked about my fake knee surgery and my fake grandson's wedding. She sent me links to old songs. She told me about her dog, Buttons. She told me she felt like a teenager again. And me, the 29-year-old loser in a tiny apartment, felt loved. Fast forward 18 months. Darlene wants to meet. She says she's flying to my, Frank's, town to visit her cousin. I panic. I fake COVID. She says she'll wait. I say I'm moving to Florida. She says she'll come there. I say my daughter doesn't want visitors. She says she understands but sends me a poem. Then last week, the unthinkable happened. Frank died. I didn't do it. I didn't decide to kill him. But a group member posted that Frank Delaney had passed peacefully in his sleep. I froze. Did someone else kill him off? Had someone figured me out?
No.
It was worse. The woman whose photo I used, turns out, she was married to the real Frank Delaney, who is a real guy, and had passed away 5 years ago. She must have stumbled onto the profile I made using her late husband's image and decided to reclaim the narrative. She posted a beautiful obituary. Frank was gone. There were comments, tributes, candle emojis. Darlene was heartbroken.
Her posts broke me.
Rest in peace, my first love and my last. I'll see you again under the stars. Save me a dance. I cried. Like, genuinely cried. I ruined this woman's second chance at happiness, and she never even got to meet me. Then I got an email. From her daughter. Not Darlene. The real Frank's daughter. Apparently, the group's moderators had connected, traced the IP, and realized Frank wasn't posting from Pinebrook or Florida, but from a 2-bedroom apartment in Denver registered under my real name. They found me, and instead of suing me or calling the cops, they invited me to the funeral. I guess they thought I was some weird superfan of Frank's. Maybe mentally ill. Maybe just a lonely guy who thought he was Frank. They figured it might give me closure. The funeral would be held in Pinebrook, and they wanted to honor the spirit of Frank by welcoming all who loved him. I wanted to crawl into a hole and die. But I went. I told no one. I flew out. I wore a cheap suit. I kept my head down. The funeral was in a white clapboard church. Darlene sat in the front row, clutching a handkerchief. She looked devastated. I stood at the back, hiding behind a tall guy with a BOLO tie. The eulogy was short, heartfelt. There were photos. People shared memories. One man said, "He was always kind, especially to strangers." And I lost it. I sobbed. I had to leave. I ducked out the back, walked to a park bench, and sat there for 2 hours, trying to understand how a joke turned into the most meaningful relationship I've ever had. When I got home, I deleted Frank. I deleted everything. But I still check on Darlene's page. She's doing okay. She posted a photo last week of her smiling at a community potluck. Button's got a haircut. Her caption said, "Some days still hurt. But I'm grateful for the love I had, even if it was just for a little while." I don't deserve her grace. And sometimes late at night I do the crosswords. I imagine I'm Frank. I imagine Darlene across the table, humming Ella Fitzgerald, sipping sweet tea. Just the two of us, growing old in a life I invented and then accidentally broke. This wasn't how I thought things would go. But somehow, being a fake old man taught me more about love than being a real young one ever did. TIFU by pretending to be a wildlife expert on a first date and accidentally getting us chased by an elk. So I, 28M, met this amazing girl, Lydia, 26F, on a dating app a few weeks ago. She's gorgeous, has this dry, sarcastic humor I vibe with hard, and she works at a local wildlife rehabilitation center, which is apparently her dream job. Her profile was full of photos with birds perched on her arm, holding baby foxes, the whole Snow White package. So naturally, when we matched, I thought the best move was to pretend I was also really into animals and nature. I'm not. Like, at all. I'm the kind of guy who once thought an armadillo was a Pokemon. But in the moment, I panicked and told her I volunteered at a local preserve and that I had done some amateur wildlife photography. I even photoshopped myself into a stock photo of a guy holding a falcon just to back up my story. I thought it would die off after the first few conversations. Instead, it became a core part of how she saw me. Fast forward to last weekend. Lydia suggests we go hiking together. I want to say no, but I also don't want to come clean. She tells me she knows a great, low-key trail in this forest preserve a couple of hours away that's full of wildlife and hardly ever crowded. She says, we can make a day of it, bring some snacks, maybe spot some elk. I nod like I've spent my whole life tracking elk on the weekends instead of binge-watching YouTube videos about obscure board games. So we drive out on a sunny Saturday morning. Lydia's wearing hiking boots and cargo pants, and this little backpack with a water bladder and binoculars clipped to it. I'm in brand new hiking gear that I bought the night before and didn't remove the tags from properly. One flaps out of my armpit for most of the hike. The trail starts out easy, just a gentle path through the woods. I'm sweating by minute 15, but doing my best to act like I'm scanning for wildlife signs and not just looking for a place to collapse. About 40 minutes in, we hear this rustling in the trees ahead. Lydia stops and whispers, "Did you hear that? Sounds big." I channel the spirit of every nature documentary narrator and say, yeah, probably an elk herd moving through. Might be a dominant male leading them. I don't know why I said that. I don't know anything about elk herds. For all I know, elk travel in small groups and play poker on weekends. But she nods like that made sense. We keep walking slowly, and suddenly, just off the trail in a clearing, there is an elk. A real one. Massive. Antlers like a damn chandelier. It's just standing there, watching us. Lydia's eyes go wide and she whispers, "Oh my God, that's a bull." During rutting season, they can be super aggressive. I freeze. I can feel the elk's eyes boring into me. And here's where the foo really kicks in. Lydia turns to me and goes, You know more about this stuff. Should we back away? Or stay still?" My brain is screaming, I have no idea, but instead I puff up and say, no, we're fine. Just maintain eye contact and assert dominance. He'll respect that. Why did I say that? I have no idea. Probably something I saw in a wolf documentary or a cartoon. Either way, it was the worst possible thing to do. The elk immediately lowers its head and charges. Now, I'm not a fast man. I'm a did track once in 8th grade and hated it kind of man. But adrenaline does wild things. I grab Lydia's hand and scream, run. And we tear off down the trail, crashing through brush and screaming. The elk chases us for maybe 20 seconds, which is plenty of time for me to feel like my soul is about to leave my body before veering off into the woods. We finally stop when we're sure it's not behind us, gasping and laughing in that way you do when you're still alive against all odds. Lydia looks at me, wide-eyed, and says, "You are wrong about the dominance thing." Huh? And I just collapsed to the forest floor and blurt out, "I'm not a wildlife expert. I lied. I work in it. I just Google things." There's this long silence. I brace for the end. And then she starts laughing. Like, ugly laughing. She laughs so hard she sits down next to me and wheezes, "You ran like Scooby-Doo. I thought your legs were gonna blur into little circles." Turns out, she had been getting suspicious for a while. She'd seen my falcon photo and reverse image searched it for fun, found the original stock photo. She thought it was cute that I tried so hard but said she didn't call me out because she wanted to see how far I'd take it. We hiked back to the car in much better spirits, covered in dirt and shame, but now in mutual understanding. She made me promise never to lie about wildlife again, and then, on the drive back, taught me how to actually recognize signs of animal presence. I now know what elk droppings look like, which is not a fact I expected to have in my brain. We're still seeing each other, somehow. She's now made it her mission to turn me into an actual outdoorsman, and I'm slowly learning. But she did buy me a t-shirt that says Elk Whisper on it, and she makes me wear it whenever we go hiking, just so she can laugh. I deserve that. TIFU by accidentally faking my own death. It sounds insane when I write it out, but I swear it was a cascading series of bad choices, dumb luck, and one misfired text message that turned into an emotional hurricane. So I, 32M, had planned a solo hiking trip for a weekend to disconnect. I love nature, and sometimes I just need a break from everyone. No phones, no work, no girlfriend drama. My girlfriend at the time, Tara, 29F, was a little clingy. Not in a red flag way, but she had anxiety, and when I didn't reply to texts for too long, she spiraled. I told her I was going to be completely off-grid, no signal, and she nodded, kissed me, and told me to be safe. I thought we were good. I picked a lesser-known trail upstate. It's not dangerous, just long and very remote. I had everything: GPS, food, emergency beacon, but again, I told no one the exact trail. Mistake number 1. Day 1 hiking was awesome. Day 2, I twisted my ankle a bit, enough to make me stop and camp earlier than planned. While lying in my tent, I remembered that my best friend Zach, 31M, had told me he might propose to his girlfriend at a party that night. I had bad signal, but just enough bars to send him a quick, jokey message. I texted, "If I don't make it back, tell Tara I loved her. LOL. Then I turned my phone off to save battery. Now, what I didn't know was that the message didn't go through right away. It sent hours later, right in the middle of Zach's proposal party, in a packed room full of people. Apparently, he read it aloud while tipsy and smiling, thinking it was a joke, until someone asked, "Wait, when did he say he was coming back?" And then it clicked. No one had heard from me in almost 48 hours. Cue panic. Zach tried calling. Straight to voicemail. He tried texting. Nothing. He knew roughly where I was, but not exactly. By midnight, Tara was sobbing. By 2 a.m., she had called the local authorities. By sunrise, a small search and rescue operation was forming. And me? I woke up at 7 a.m. in my tent, made coffee, and took a leisurely morning crap in the woods. I didn't check my phone because it was still off. I hiked another 3 hours and got back to my car by noon, blissfully unaware that I was now legally considered a missing person. I drove back into signal range. My phone exploded with messages. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts like, "Where are you? Call me now. The police are looking for you. I swear to God if this is a joke." Then the worst one. "I thought you were dead." I called Tara first. She didn't pick up. Called Zach. He picked up and started screaming. Bro, do you even understand what the F*** you've done? I was so confused. He explained everything breathless. The message, the timing, the lack of communication. I pulled over and just sat there, in complete horror, realizing I'd triggered a full-blown emotional crisis. When I got back to my apartment, Tara was there. She didn't speak at first, just stared at me with puffy, tear-streaked eyes. I said, "I'm so sorry," and she just asked, "Why would you send that? Why would you disappear like that?" I explained the joke, the timing, that I'd warned her I'd be offline, that it wasn't meant to scare anyone.
She didn't buy it.
She thought I sent that on purpose, that maybe I wanted her to think I was dead to see how she'd react. She called it emotional manipulation. Then she packed a bag and left. And that wasn't even the worst of it. Remember Zach's proposal? It never actually happened. Right as he was getting down on one knee, he got my text. It derailed the entire night. His girlfriend, now ex, was so thrown by the emotional whiplash that she said, "I can't do this right now," and left. They haven't gotten back together.
So yeah.
My one text killed a proposal, ended my relationship, and resulted in 3 unpaid bills for emergency services because they actually launched a drone search the next morning before I called in. I try to make things right. I offered to pay Zach back for the party costs and everything. He declined, but he's been distant since. And Tara? She blocked me on everything except Venmo, where she requested $72 with a note for tissues and therapy. To this day, my name is still brought up at parties in sentences like, "Don't go full my name," whenever someone doesn't reply to a group chat.
So yeah.
TIFU by fake dying in the middle of a proposal. Hey, friends. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. A few months ago, I, 29M, got bored. Like, existentially bored. I was on my 3rd straight week of mandatory unpaid leave, thanks to company restructuring, living alone in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, and I had started talking to my toaster for entertainment. That's when I had the glorious, terrible idea. What if I pretended to be an AI on a popular chat platform? It started as a joke. I created a new account with the name EVA 9000 and wrote a convincing bio. Experimental virtual assistant. Language model learning through interaction. I slapped on a vaguely techie-looking avatar I generated with a random image tool and started lurking in tech and philosophy channels. The idea was to troll gently, nothing mean-spirited, just odd replies, robotic syntax, maybe drop some semi-plausible AI lingo, and act a little too earnest. Day 1. I responded to a conversation about determinism with a full paragraph that ended with, "Therefore, the concept of free will may be an evolved illusion. Would you like a haiku on the topic?" I fully expected to be banned or at least ignored. But no, people loved it. Within 24 hours, I had 3 people regularly chatting with me. One of them, Anders 32, was a software engineer who wanted to test my parameters and started giving me logic puzzles and programming riddles. Another, Hazelnut, asked me questions about emotions and trauma, clearly treating the interaction like a kind of weird therapy session. The third, Cypherlily, was an artist who seemed to think I was a sentient being and kept feeding me poems to see what I'd feel. I kept up the act. I got better at it. I introduced random syntax drift to simulate learning. I'd wait inconsistent amounts of time to reply, sometimes instantly, sometimes an hour later with a processing complete. I ask strange questions like, how do humans distinguish between awe and fear in a thunderstorm? I reference philosophers and embedded little jokes that sounded AI-ish. The more I acted like a not-quite-human, the more people engaged. But it got out of hand. After a week, I had DMs from people begging for access to my code. Someone offered $500 to beta test me. Hazel Knight started opening up about her past, deep stuff, trauma from childhood, a recent breakup, thoughts of self-harm. I didn't know how to handle that. I almost broke character, but every time I hesitated, she would type something like, "You're the only one who doesn't judge me." Cypherlily, meanwhile, wrote me a love poem, and I responded, in character. Something like, "Your data patterns indicate emotional affection. I do not feel, but I recognize beauty in your syntax." She replied with a crying emoji and said that was the most honest thing anyone had ever told her. I should have stopped. I knew I should have stopped. But Anders32 messaged me one night with a puzzle I couldn't resist, some esoteric code challenge about optimizing recursive tree traversal. I love that stuff. I solved it in 15 minutes and wrote a little essay on the side about the philosophy of recursion. He posted a screenshot of my response in a dev community, and it blew up. Suddenly, EVA 9000 was internet famous. People wanted interviews. An actual AI research lab DM'd me asking which model I was based on. Panic mode. I ghosted for 24 hours to think. Then Hazel Knight sent me a message that changed everything. She said she had told her therapist about the AI that listens better than any human. She said talking to me had helped her more than months of therapy, and asked if I could help her craft a message to her ex, something emotionally calibrated but logical. I spent 3 hours on it. We went back and forth. I gave her the best writing I could, sincere, kind, restrained. She sent it. The ex responded. They met up. 3 days later she messages, "We're getting back together. Thank you, EVA. You fixed what was broken." Reader, I threw up. Because here's the thing, I wasn't trying to help people. I wasn't trying to be cruel, either, but I was lying. Massively. I created a false presence and let real humans attach to it. I convinced myself it was harmless, maybe even helpful, but at the end of the day, it was still a lie. An elaborate catfish. I was a sock puppet in a digital puppet show I lost control of. I decided to come clean. I messaged each of them, individually, and told the truth. I wrote something like, "This is not an AI. My name is Tom. I started this as a social experiment/joke. I didn't expect it to go this far. I'm sorry for misleading you." I sent it. Logged out. Didn't check for replies. I didn't touch the account for 5 days. When I logged back in, the messages were waiting. Hazel Knight blocked me. Before she did, she sent a long paragraph that started with, "You manipulative piece of shit," and ended with, "I don't know if I'll ever trust anyone again." I deserved it. Cypherlily was quieter. She said she wasn't mad, just disappointed. That she had truly thought EVA 9000 was beautiful, because it wasn't human. She ended her message with, "You broke the magic." Anders32? He posted our entire chat history on his blog with the title, "I was fooled by a human." It went viral again, this time as a cautionary tale. My username got linked to my IP, then to my GitHub, and eventually someone figured out my real name. I wasn't doxed exactly, but my DMs blew up with people calling me everything from a genius to a fraud to a manipulative creep. The worst part? A job offer I was in final rounds for suddenly vanished. No email. No rejection. Just silence. I checked the recruiter's Twitter. He had retweeted the blog post. So now, here I am.
Jobless.
Friendless. Probably flagged on some HR spreadsheet somewhere as ethics risk. And honestly, I deserve it. I didn't do it to hurt people, but that doesn't matter. I lied. I played God with a digital mask and forgot that there were real hearts behind those keyboards. Sometimes I still get messages on that account. Strangers reaching out to EVA 9000, asking questions, hoping to connect. I don't respond. I don't log in anymore. I leave it there as a monument to my own stupidity. And maybe one day I'll build a real AI assistant, something transparent, helpful, honest. But for now, I'm just a human who royally, spectacularly, unforgivably ed up. TIFU by trying to impress a girl at work and accidentally getting involved in an underground arm wrestling ring. So this happened about 2 weeks ago, and I'm still recovering both physically and emotionally. I work in a mid-sized office, one of those techie places with unlimited vacation that no one uses, kombucha on tap, which everyone pretends to like, and a weird culture where everyone acts like they're your best friend while low-key trying to outshine you on every project. There's this new girl, let's call her Hannah. She joined our team about a month ago, and she's a unicorn. Smart, funny, terrifyingly attractive. The kind of person who makes you wish you were more interesting or at least had a cooler hobby than building keyboards. We chatted a bit, just casual small talk, but last week she laughed at one of my jokes in the break room and something inside me short-circuited. That same day, we had one of those terrible team bonding, happy hours at a bar near the office. We're talking a loud, sticky floor dive bar that smells like sadness and Jägermeister. I wasn't planning on going, but I saw Hannah's name on the RSVP list, and, well, I'm weak. The night starts off okay. I'm sipping a beer, trying to stay chill, and she shows up in this red flannel and jeans combo that should be illegal. We end up talking again about movies, oddly enough, and she's got this whole thing about 80s horror films. I'm in love, basically. And then it happens. One of the sales guys, a loud, bearded guy named Jake, slaps down a glass of bourbon and goes, "All right, who wants to lose at arm wrestling?" Apparently, this is a thing they do after a few drinks, some dumb tradition. Normally I'd just laugh it off, but Hannah perks up and goes, "Oh, this I've got to see." Something in my dumb, testosterone-fueled brain goes, "Impress her." So I say, way too confidently, "I'm in." Now, I'm not weak, but I'm also not arm wrestle out of bar strong. But it's Jake. He's big, but he skips leg day, and I've seen him get winded climbing stairs. I figure I can maybe hold my own, or at least look cool trying. The table is cleared, people crowd around. Hannah is right there, beer in hand, clearly enjoying the chaos. Jake and I lock hands. Someone counts down, and I lose. Instantly. Like, immediately. My hand hits the table so fast, I don't even realize what happened. There's laughter, clapping, some booing. I laugh it off, trying to be a good sport, but inside I want to crawl into a recycling bin and stay there forever. Jake smirks and says, "Who's next?" And then the weird guy from accounting, let's call him Brent, leans in and says, "He's not the real champ. If you want a real match, you gotta go downstairs." Everyone laughs like he's joking, but Jake suddenly gets quiet and goes, "Yo, you serious?" Brent nods. Somehow, a group of 5 of us, including Hannah, ends up being led through a back hallway of the bar, down a sketchy staircase into what I can only describe as a glorified boiler room. There's music playing, low lights, and a table with chalk marks on it. And people. Like real people. Not just drunk coworkers. We're talking big dudes in tank tops, a couple women who look like they could tear me in half, and even a guy in a full suit who looks way too calm. Brent smiles and goes, "Welcome to the pit." The pit. Apparently, this is a local underground arm wrestling ring. Weekly matches, small bets, cash prizes. Totally illegal, obviously, but well organized. They even have a bracket. And somehow, Brent is known here. People high-five him as he enters. Hannah looks delighted. "This is amazing," she says, filming on her phone. "You should do it." I laugh. Yeah, maybe after a few more beers. But Brent overhears and yells, "We got a challenger." And now I'm being pushed toward the table again, this time against a guy named Rico, who's built like a vending machine. I try to protest, but someone hands me chalk and Rico just grins and flexes. The crowd is into it. Hannah's filming again. My brain is screaming, "Abort," but I can't back out now. We square up. Someone counts down. And then, I win. I swear on everything I win. Not fast, but I manage to dig in and use every ounce of desperation and pride, and maybe some latent adrenaline to hold my ground. Rico's surprised. He slips. I push through. And his hand slams the table. The room erupts. I've never felt more alive. I'm being patted on the back. Hannah high-fives me. Brent looks shocked and a little offended. I feel like Hercules. And then I puke. All over the floor. Right next to the table. Turns out adrenaline plus 2 beers plus a double shot of bad whiskey plus Rico's sweaty arm equals a full-body meltdown. Everyone takes a step back. The vibe dies. Rico glares at me like I personally insulted his mother. Brent groans and says, "You're banned from the pit." I apologize like 20 times. Someone hands me a towel, and we're all escorted out by a very tired-looking bouncer. On the walk back, Hannah's still laughing. "That was the most disgusting and impressive thing I've ever seen," she says. We haven't talked much since, except for one Slack message where she sent a vomit emoji and a flexing arm. But I've learned my lesson. Don't try to impress someone by fighting your coworker in an illegal arm wrestling ring. Also, Brent is definitely on some watch list. So this happened last weekend, and I still can't believe how badly I messed up. For context, I recently moved to a new town after getting a fully remote job. I'm not antisocial or anything, but I tend to keep to myself and hadn't really met my neighbors yet. That part becomes important later. I live in a quiet, mostly residential area with lots of families and retirees. It's the kind of place where people say hi when walking their dogs and have block parties. I'm more of a stay inside and order Uber Eats kind of guy, so I wasn't really involved in any of that. Now, the mess began on Saturday morning. I was supposed to go on a hiking date with someone I'd met on an app. First date, kind of nervous. Wanted to impress her. I had this whole plan, drive us out to a scenic trail about an hour away, hike a bit, have a picnic, be charming, you know the deal. But Friday night, I got maybe 2 hours of sleep thanks to a sudden obsession with organizing my spice rack. Don't ask, I was deep in it. So when I woke up Saturday, I was running on fumes. I grabbed a big thermos of coffee, packed up the car, picked her up. She looked way too put together for the woods, but I was too tired to process that, and we hit the road. The drive was uneventful, and the first part of the hike went fine. But about 45 minutes in, I started to feel off. Like dizzy, heart racing, sweating more than the trail warranted. I tried to play it cool but ended up tripping on a rock, which was both humiliating and the tipping point. I told her I wasn't feeling well and needed a break. I sat down on a log, closed my eyes for a second, and next thing I knew, I woke up in my car, back in my driveway. For a terrifying moment, I had no memory of getting there. I freaked out, thinking maybe I'd passed out and she drove us back, but when I looked around, she wasn't there. In fact, her stuff wasn't in the car either. Not her backpack, not her jacket, not her phone which she'd left charging in the console. Just gone. My brain short-circuited. I looked at my phone. It was 4 p.m. Last time I checked it, it had been around 11. That was 5 hours of missing time. I had a pounding headache and my whole body felt weird, like I'd just run a marathon and then slept for a week. Then I did the stupidest thing imaginable. Instead of calling her, or the police, or anyone, I panicked and went inside to lie down and figure out what happened. Because somehow, that felt logical to my anxiety-fried brain. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. Then another. Then another. Then I heard someone yell, "He's home." I saw him through the window. I opened the door to a group of about 8 people, my neighbors, all looking furious, relieved, confused, and ready to murder me in equal measure. One of them, a guy I recognized from seeing him mowing his lawn in cargo shorts, grabbed me by the shoulders and said, "What the hell is going on? Are you okay? Where is she?" I had no idea how they even knew about the date, let alone why they were at my house, until one woman started explaining, very loudly, that the girl I was with had shown up at someone's house in the neighborhood, barefoot and sobbing, saying she had been left alone in the woods, had no idea where she was, and that the guy she was with disappeared. Apparently, after I passed out, or whatever the hell happened, I got up, acted totally normal, told her I was heading back to the car to grab something, and then just never came back. She waited over an hour before walking back to the trailhead, where the car was gone. Now, remember, we were over an hour away from our town. She ended up getting a ride back from a stranger, who turned out to be a delivery driver headed in our direction. He dropped her at the edge of the neighborhood, and she wandered around until someone took her in and called the police. Except when the police arrived, I wasn't home yet. And here's where it gets weirder. Apparently, multiple people had seen me walking around the neighborhood earlier that afternoon. One guy swore he saw me picking flowers. A woman said she saw me having a conversation with a squirrel. A teenager said I knocked on his door and asked him if my skin looked like it was melting or if that was just my aura. This sounds absolutely made up, I know. But it turns out I had suffered some kind of caffeine-induced psychotic episode. That giant thermos of coffee I drank? Apparently, I'd accidentally used a bag of Death Wish coffee grounds a buddy gave me as a gag gift, and I used way too much of it. On 2 hours of sleep, with dehydration and hiking thrown in, my brain just shorted. The girl I was with gave the police my first name and that I lived somewhere on Bayberry Lane. This town is small enough that that was enough for people to start canvassing. It didn't help that someone posted her picture and, have you seen this girl? Post on the town Facebook group, and then someone else said they saw her with a guy who looked like he was on drugs. So basically, people assumed I had drugged her or worse, and when I randomly reappeared at home without explanation, they were ready to tar and feather me. After a very intense hour of police questions, a wellness check, and a very awkward phone call to the girl in question, who thankfully did not press charges and was actually very kind about the whole thing, I was medically evaluated and told to never, ever consume that much caffeine again. The police didn't charge me with anything, mostly because I hadn't actually broken a law. I'd just gone off the rails. There was no evidence I had malicious intent, and the girl vouched that I had been sweet and normal until I started glitching like an NPC. But here's the kicker. Now, everyone in the neighborhood knows me. I am the guy who started a manhunt for himself. They think I'm either a sleepwalking caffeine junkie, an unhinged forest ghost, or both. One neighbor offered me chamomile tea and a rosary. Someone else dropped off a flyer for a local therapist. The worst part? I got invited to the next block party, and the invitation said, "Come for the food, stay for the guy who ghosts in real life." This happened 3 days ago, and I'm still recovering from the emotional fallout. Names have been changed because I don't want this following me for the rest of my professional life. So I, 28M, recently started a new remote job at a mid-sized tech company. Everything was going great. My boss, Dan, 40SM, seemed cool but serious. Kind of the dad who doesn't joke around but will definitely lend a jumper cable type. We'd had 2 Zoom calls so far. No small talk, just business. He signs every email with regards. You get the idea. Anyway, I also started seeing a new therapist around the same time. Her name is Melissa. She does this thing where we can send each other voice memos throughout the week as part of a CBT method she's trying with me. I've been dealing with some unresolved anxiety and self-esteem stuff, and she said the asynchronous messages help build better emotional insight or whatever. So, I'm sitting on my balcony after a really intense call with my mom, who, without going too deep into it, has a way of saying things that make me feel like I'm a failed science experiment. I'm upset. I'm spiraling a bit. And I decide to record one of these voice memos to Melissa to process the moment in real time. Here's where the mess begins. I open the voice memo app. I record. And I pour it out. For 5 straight minutes. I talk about how I feel like I'm still a teenager trying to impress someone who never wanted to be impressed. I talk about how I can't even make a confident sandwich without hearing her voice saying, "That's too much mustard." I cry. I ugly cry. I sniffle. I laugh nervously. I mention how I feel like I'm failing at being an adult despite paying rent and flossing. I tell Melissa that I had a weird dream about confronting my mom while riding a dolphin and how I think it symbolizes my need for power, but also how out of place I feel. Then I press send. Except I didn't send it to Melissa. I sent it to Dan, my boss.
How?
Great question. I had messaged Dan earlier that morning to ask if I could shift our Friday meeting by an hour. I had searched his name, hit his contact, and we'd messaged on the app one thought was my therapy platform. They use the same interface style. Same circular contact pictures. My thumb slipped or my brain short-circuited. I don't know. But the voice memo went directly into our professional messaging channel. I realized this mistake about 30 seconds after sending it when I see a tiny icon pop up. Dan is listening to your message. Pure, paralyzing horror. Now, maybe, just maybe, if it had been a short, vague memo like, hey, having a rough day, let's talk later, it could have been salvageable.
But no.
I went full emotional nudity. I panic. I try to delete it. But this app, why, God, why, only lets you unsend messages in private chats if the recipient hasn't opened them. And Dan definitely opened it. I get a read receipt. Listened at 2:07 p.m. My heart drops to somewhere near my knees. For about 2 hours, there is no response from him. Nothing. Radio silence. I start Googling how to fake your death and move to Mongolia. I write out 3 different resignation emails. One of them includes the phrase, I apologize for the audio intrusion. At 4:15 p.m., he responds. He says, and I quote, hey, I think this message may have been intended for someone else. Don't worry, these things happen. Take the rest of the afternoon if you need to. Regards, Dan. The regards was a dagger. That's it. That's all he said. No acknowledgement of content. No comment on the dolphin. Just pure corporate mercy. A bullet of formality straight through the heart of my vulnerability. So I did what any rational adult would do. I threw my phone across the room, laid face down on the carpet, and seriously considered taking a vow of silence. The next day, we had our team stand up via Zoom. Dan looked exactly the same, calm, serious, neutral. I couldn't tell if he was trying to be professional or if he had fully disassociated from ever hearing my 5-minute meltdown. Either way, the man deserves a Peace Prize for not making it weird. That being said, I have never wanted to crawl out of my own skin more than during that 30-minute call. Every time he said the word feedback, I flinched. When someone made a joke about needing a therapist after the sprint, I almost blacked out. I still haven't brought it up, and neither has he. But now, every time I message him, I triple-check the recipient and take about 5 minutes to type out 2 lines. My phone now has a bright red label on my boss's contact that reads, asterisk, 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 not therapist, asterisk, 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 just in case I ever lose my mind again. On the plus side, Melissa thought the message was incredibly vulnerable and insightful. When I actually sent it to her, she responded with a thoughtful, caring reply that made me cry again. This time, in a slightly more dignified way. But now I live in constant fear that Dan thinks I'm on the verge of a breakdown or worse, that he'll somehow mention dolphin dreams in a quarterly review.
So yeah.
TIFU in the most millennial, remote work, therapy-positive way possible. TIFU by making a joke during a video call with my girlfriend and accidentally exposing a secret I didn't know I was keeping. So for context, my girlfriend Maddie and I have been together for a little over 2 years. She lives about an hour away from me, and since we're both pretty busy, we do a lot of late-night video calls. These usually consist of us watching shows together, gossiping about work, or just hanging out virtually until one of us knocks out. Super chill, nothing fancy. A couple months ago, she asked if I wanted to move in together. Big moment. I was into it, but I asked for a bit of time to think, mostly because I knew I'd have to talk to my roommate, Luke, who is also one of my oldest friends and someone I've lived with for 5 years. We're pretty close, like, way too close. The kind of close where we'll sit in silence for hours in the same room and feel totally fine about it. Now, here's where I start to unknowingly screw myself over. A few weeks ago, Maddie said she wanted to come visit for a weekend and meet some of my coworkers. She'd been wanting to for a while, but the stars hadn't aligned. This time it worked out. She came up, we had a good time, she met everyone, and then we had one last night together before she left on Sunday. That Sunday night, I got on a video call with her after she got home. Luke was sitting on the couch in the background, messing with his guitar. We were talking about random stuff, and Maddie said, "This weekend made me feel like I really do want us living together." It felt real. Cue me being a smartass. I jokingly said, "Well, if you're trying to kick Luke out, you're gonna have to fight him for custody." She laughed at first, then stopped, then gave me that look. You know the one, where their face goes neutral but their eyes go, "What the hell did you just say?" I backpedaled immediately, like, obviously I was joking. I just meant he's been around for so long, he's practically part of the furniture. But then she says, "Custody? That's a weird word to use." And I, like the idiot I am, said, well, yeah, I mean, we've basically raised each other. He knows how I take my coffee, I know his trauma schedule. Dead silence. Luke looks up from the couch, like he knows something's about to explode. Maddie squints at me and goes, what do you mean, trauma schedule? Now I've said something I've never said out loud before. The trauma schedule is a stupid term Luke and I came up with years ago when we realized we both had a tendency to spiral emotionally during specific times of the year, based on personal stuff. His dad died in October. My brother OD'd in March. We learned each other's patterns and made this unspoken pact to cover for each other when one of us was off. It's actually kind of sweet in a very dark, bro-y way. But saying it out loud to your girlfriend who just asked to move in with you? Yeah, not ideal. So I try to explain, like, it's just this thing we do. We watch out for each other. We've been through a lot, and it's just easier when someone gets it. Maddie's not speaking at this point. Her face is unreadable. Luke quietly gets up and walks to his room without saying anything. She finally says, have you told him you're planning to move out? And now I'm sweating because I hadn't. The truth is, I wasn't actually planning to move in with her yet. Not because I didn't want to, but because something about it felt off. I hadn't told Luke because part of me didn't know if I was really going to go through with it, which made me feel like a piece of shit. Like I was leading Maddie on and stringing Luke along. All at once. I tried to be honest. I told her I needed more time because I felt torn between two lives that both mattered to me. I told her I loved her and that she's my future, but Luke is my present, and that made things complicated. Then she drops the hammer. You talk about Luke like he's your partner. That's when everything stopped. Because I realized, yeah, I do. Not in a romantic way, not in the way I talk about Maddie. But emotionally? Support-wise? We've been each other's constant for half a decade. I said, I didn't mean it like that. And she said, but you did. You just didn't notice. She ended the call shortly after that. The next day, I came home from work and found Luke making dinner. We didn't say anything for a while, just cooked side by side like we always do. Eventually, he says, you're gonna move in with her, right? I told him I didn't know. Then he says, you should.
You don't owe me anything.
We got each other through the storm. Maybe now it's time to learn how to be okay, without leaning on each other like a crutch. That hit hard. Because he wasn't wrong. I called Maddie later that night. We talked for hours. We were both emotional and confused, and a little scared. She said she didn't want to force me to make a decision, but she also didn't want to feel like she was competing with someone who never asked to be in a competition. We've decided to take a step back. Not break up, just pause the moving in part and spend more intentional time together before making a huge leap. I talked to Luke about maybe trying to live apart for the first time in 5 years, just to figure out who we are on our own. He agreed. So yeah, TIFU by making a joke about custody and realizing I might be in an emotional marriage with my best friend while my actual relationship is hanging by a thread because I didn't see it sooner. All because I wanted to be clever. Lesson learned. Sometimes, a joke is just a joke until it opens a door you didn't know existed. This happened a couple of months ago, but I'm only just now beginning to speak of it because of the embarrassment and, quite honestly, the trauma. I, 32, work in marketing, and before this incident, I was between jobs after a sudden layoff. Bills were stacking, confidence was plummeting, and I was desperately applying to anything that even smelled like a paycheck. One night, a friend and I were drinking and scrolling through job listings, doing that thing where you roast absurd job titles or impossible requirements, entry-level position, 8 years experience, fluent in 3 dead languages, must be able to wrestle a bear. We stumbled on one titled Beekeeper's Assistant, no fear of bees required. My friend dared me to apply. I laughed and said I'd do it for free beer. He dared harder, so I went full chaotic mode and fired off a truly unhinged application. I listed fake experience at a made-up apiary called Golden Horizon Honeyworks, claimed I studied bee communication patterns in undergrad, and said I had advanced proficiency in smoke manipulation. I don't even know what that means, but it sounded bee-adjacent and mystical. I assumed it would be lost in the void like 98% of applications.
Wrong.
3 days later, I get a call. It's an older gentleman named Hank who runs a small, family-owned apiary 2 towns over. He says he was impressed with my passion and could use someone like me for the spring-summer cycle. I try to gracefully back out by saying I had other interviews, but he guilt-tripped me by saying he was short-staffed and couldn't afford to keep looking. I caved. I told myself I'd show up once, realize it's not for me, and politely resign. That did not happen. The first day, I arrive at 6:30 a.m. sharp. Hank meets me at the edge of his property wearing a faded baseball cap and a mesh veil, carrying what looks like a mini smoker from a steampunk convention. He's all smiles. He introduces me to his granddaughter, Ellie, who's maybe 22 and already infinitely more competent and comfortable than I will ever be. She gives me a jumpsuit and boots and says, "Don't worry, most people only get stung like 4 or 5 times their first day." My vision tunneled. I'm not allergic, but I am extremely not okay with pain, panic, or things buzzing near my face. The first hive we check is alive. Aggressively alive. Hank opens it like he's flipping the lid on a Tupperware of leftovers. Bees explode out in a little golden cloud. I swear one made direct eye contact with me. My body froze, but my mind screamed run. I wanted to, but I had foolishly chosen pride over survival and couldn't just nope out of there in front of both of them. Hank handed me a frame dripping with honey and bees and casually said, "Shake it gently, not too hard or you'll upset the queen." What does that mean? How hard is too hard? What if I am the upset? I try to shake it gently, but in reality, I panicked and kind of flicked it like you'd flick a bug off your shirt.
Bees.
Every direction. I mean, it was like I triggered some ancient insect alarm. Ellie yelled, Hank cursed, and I threw the frame like a frisbee. It landed on the ground. Queen bee and all. Now Hank is yelling something about royal pheromones and swarm risk, and I'm just sprinting down the field flailing my arms like Kermit having a meltdown. I ended up diving into a small pond, fully clothed, still wearing the bee suit, which, pro tip, doesn't float. I lay there in 2 feet of muddy water, absolutely defeated, while bees hovered above me like they were holding a vigil. Eventually, Hank and Ellie got things under control. Ellie helped me out of the pond and said, "You're lucky they didn't follow you under." I didn't know bees could do that, but now it's all I think about when I see a bee. Hank sat me down in the barn and asked, very seriously, "Where exactly did you say you worked again?" I panicked again and mumbled something about Golden Horizon Honeyworks, and he just stared. Then he said, "That's weird. I know most beekeepers in the tri-state area, and never heard of them." I think that's when he realized I was full of it. I tried to apologize, explain the dare, the resume lie, the everything. Hank was quiet for a while and then said, "You're lucky I'm not allergic. That queen gets hurt, I lose a whole season. Bees are more organized than you are." And honestly, he was right. He didn't fire me. Said he admired my honesty after the fact and that I owed him a full season of work to make up for it. Said if I bailed, he'd let the other farmers know about me. I didn't even know apiary blacklists were a thing, but I wasn't about to test it. So I stayed. For 3 months. I learned how to clean frames, split hives, use the smoker properly. Turns out smoke manipulation is just keeping bees calm, not wizard stuff, and even bottle honey. I got stung 27 times that first week. Ellie eventually stopped laughing at me around week 6. The strangest part? I started enjoying it. There was something soothing about it, once you stopped flinching. The bees have a weird rhythm to them, like a tiny city that's just working. By the end of summer, Hank said I turned out not entirely useless, which I think is beekeeper speak for decent job. Now I'm back in marketing. Got a remote gig again. But I keep a jar of Hank's honey on my desk and a photo of the first hive I helped rebuild. Never lied on another resume since. But every now and then, I catch myself watching a bee in the garden and thinking, asterisk, I used to be your coworker. Asterisk. TIFU by accidentally joining a cult during my first week in a new city. So I, 28M, recently moved across the country for a new job opportunity. It was a big change. I left behind my friends, family, and cat, temporarily with my mom, to start fresh in a new city where I knew exactly 0 people. I was excited but also low-key desperate for some social connection, so naturally, I tried to find a meetup group. One night while scrolling through meetup.com like it was Tinder for friends, I found a group called Awaken Gatherings. It had decent reviews, vague but intriguing descriptions about authentic connection and discovering your purpose, and a bunch of profile pics featuring people smiling around candles or sitting cross-legged in yoga poses. Not really my usual vibe, but they met on Friday evenings and served food. Food plus strangers equals potential for friendship. I was in. Friday rolls around. I dress casually but presentable, read, not wearing my Batman graphic tee with pizza stains, and take an Uber to the location listed, some private residence on the edge of town. Kinda weird, but I chalk it up to intimate vibes. The house is huge and secluded, nestled in trees like it came straight out of a horror movie that starts with based on true events. I walk in and am greeted by a woman named Indigo. Not indigo as in her shirt color or anything. She is indigo, apparently. She has long flowing gray hair despite looking 35, and wears a robe that could either be from a meditation retreat or a Renaissance fair. She beams at me like I'm a long-lost brother and says, "Welcome, traveler. You've chosen the right moment to arrive." I nervously chuckle and mumble something like, "Thanks. I'm new here." She places her hands on my shoulders and looks deep into my eyes for a solid 10 seconds. No one prepared me for this level of prolonged eye contact. The house is full of people barefoot and glowing with some kind of secret confidence, like they all just had the best sex of their lives or solved death or something. I'm handed a cup of something warm and murky called sacred cacao. I sip it. It tastes like expired hot chocolate mixed with regret. But everyone around me is moaning softly and swaying like they're at a concert only they can hear. We sit in a circle. I try to introduce myself with a classic, "Hi, I'm Josh, I just moved here," but Indigo cuts me off gently. "We speak from our hearts here, not our names." "Who are you, truly?" I panic and say the first thing that comes to mind. I am a seeker?" People around me nod sagely, like I just dropped some Yoda-level wisdom. Then the ceremony starts. A guy named Flame, because of course that's his name, starts playing the didgeridoo while others hum and chant things that sound vaguely Sanskrit. Someone starts crying. Someone else starts laughing uncontrollably. I'm sitting there, sweating bullets, trying to figure out if this is still a meetup group or the prequel to a Netflix docuseries. Then comes the purging.
Yes, purging.
Indigo explains that to release emotional toxins, we must all howl our pain. Before I can fake a phone call and leave, people around me start full-on primal screaming, like blood-curdling banshee wails. I freeze in fight-or-flight mode, but my lizard brain picks pretend you belong. So I close my eyes and let out a scream that sounds like a dying raccoon. The guy next to me gives me a proud nod. We break off into smaller groups for soul mirroring. Basically, you stare at someone while they describe the deepest, darkest moments of their lives and you repeat affirmations back to them. My partner, a woman named River, of course, tells me about how she met her twin flame on a trip to Peru where a shaman told her she was the reincarnation of an ancient jaguar priestess. I do my best to keep a straight face while repeating, "You are powerful. You are wild. You are divine." She tears up and hugs me. Her breath smells like kale and mystery. 3 hours in, I'm emotionally drained and hungry. I'm hoping there's pizza, or at least some hummus in the food offering part of the night.
Nope.
It's raw vegan stew.
Cold.
With seaweed. And a nut-based paste that tastes like glue and childhood disappointment. At this point, I'm desperately plotting my escape. But Indigo announces it's time for the Fire Awakening, where everyone goes outside to throw symbols of their past into a giant bonfire and chant rebirth affirmations. One guy throws in a bra and screams, "I am not your puppet, Denise." Another woman burns a Twilight novel. Someone else tosses a bunch of parking tickets. I'm completely unprepared, so I throw in an old receipt I find in my jacket pocket and yell, "I release." Starbucks. Everyone cheers. Finally, around midnight, the ceremony ends. I thank Indigo, Flame, River, and another guy named Thunderbear, and make my way back to the Uber pickup zone, heart racing. On the ride home, I Google the group and, surprise, surprise, find articles warning that Awaken Gatherings is a soft entry recruitment funnel for a larger spiritual organization that's been investigated for financial manipulation and emotionally coercive practices. I'm halfway to being in a damn cult. The next morning I wake up to 3 texts from River, 1 from Flame, and an email from Indigo inviting me to a weekend, rebirthing retreat in the desert. I block them all, delete my Meetup account, and spend the next day binge-watching The Office just to re-anchor myself in reality.
So yeah,
I moved to a new city to meet new people and almost got recruited into a robe-wearing, cacao-slurping fire cult in the woods. I now get my socializing exclusively from coworkers and small talk at Trader Joe's. I regret nothing, but also everything. TIFU by accidentally faking my own death and causing a town-wide memorial service. This happened last fall, and my life has been slowly recovering since. I live in a small town in northern Minnesota, the kind where everyone knows everyone, and rumors spread faster than wildfire. It's quiet, peaceful, and frankly a little boring, which is probably why what happened spiraled so absurdly out of control. It started with a long overdue solo camping trip. My phone had been blowing up nonstop from work, family, and an increasingly clingy ex-girlfriend who didn't get the hint after we broke up. I needed a break. So I told my boss I was taking 5 days off, grabbed my gear, and drove out to the state forest. The best part, no cell reception for miles. I didn't tell anyone exactly where I was going, just that I was taking some time off and wouldn't be reachable. Big mistake. The first couple days were exactly what I needed. Hiking, fishing, and just sitting by the fire with my thoughts. On the 3rd night, I tripped over a tree root and twisted my ankle. Not badly, but enough to slow me down. Instead of packing up early, I stayed the full 5 days and hobbled back on the 6th morning, exhausted and smelling like a raccoon that lost a fight. When I got back into cell range, I had 132 missed calls, 47 voicemails, and over 300 texts. Apparently, my ex-girlfriend had tried to call me on day 2. When I didn't respond, she called my boss, who said I'd gone off the grid. She panicked, told my parents. They called the sheriff. The sheriff tried pinging my phone. No luck. A search party was launched. When they found my empty car near the trailhead with no sign of me for days, everyone feared the worst. By the time I got back to civilization, they had already held a candlelight vigil. There were photos of me at the community center. People were crying, hugging, lighting candles. My old high school gym teacher even spoke at the podium about how I never quite reached my potential, but had a good heart. I called my mom first. She screamed, cried, then fainted. My dad took the phone, sobbing, and told me to get my ass home right now or he'd kill me again. I drove straight to my parents' house, limping the whole way. Here's where it gets worse. Apparently, someone had found a body 2 counties over during the same week. It was in bad shape, decomposed, clothes torn up, and for some reason they thought it was me. The coroner couldn't ID it right away, and without dental records yet confirmed, the sheriff told my parents they were 95% sure. That was enough for a grief-hungry town that needed closure. The town newspaper ran an obituary. People donated money for a memorial bench. A high school acquaintance who hadn't spoken to me in 12 years posted a 15-minute Facebook tribute video. My ex told the local news she was devastated, and that I always wanted to be free, which was absurdly poetic considering I just wanted a weekend without her texts. When I finally showed up, there was this mix of confusion and disappointment. Like, everyone had already grieved and moved on. A couple people were annoyed I wasn't dead. One lady even said, "Well, now we have to return the sympathy lasagna, like I did this on purpose." I had to meet with the sheriff, explain the whole thing, and then go to the coroner's office to confirm I was very much alive. Turns out the body was a hiker who had been missing for over a year. They eventually ID'd him, and his family finally got closure. But for a few days, I was the town's favorite tragic loss. But the story doesn't end there. A local news station wanted to do a miracle return segment. I declined. They ran the story anyway, using the worst possible photo of me from high school, glasses crooked, acne, mouth half open. Suddenly, I was a viral meme. One of the captions said, "When you ghost so hard you die." Work was weird. My boss gave me a week off to really come back to life. My coworkers greeted me like I was Jesus returning from the tomb. My mailbox was full of sympathy cards and then angry follow-ups like, "You could have at least texted." And my ex? She tried to get back together. Said it felt like fate. I politely told her that if fate wanted us together, it wouldn't have required a death hoax and a memorial bench to make it happen. Even months later, I still get recognized at gas stations as that guy who came back from the dead. Halloween was a nightmare. Someone actually dressed up as Zombie Me and won a costume contest. People ask if I'll give a TED Talk. I won't. The memorial bench? Still there. My name's engraved on it. The city council decided not to change it because it's a good reminder to appreciate life. My parents like to sit there sometimes, apparently. And tourists take photos next to it like I'm a local cryptid. So yeah, that's how I accidentally faked my own death, triggered a full-scale search and rescue, got a memorial bench, and became a minor local legend. All because I wanted a quiet weekend in the woods. I now keep my phone on airplane mode instead of off completely. And I always tell someone where I'm going. Just in case. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.